Go ahead, Sheikh.
Inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma lakal hamdu wa lakal shukr. Nahmaduka wa nusalli wa nusallimu ala abdika wa rasulika Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilma. Ya Allah, teach us that which is beneficial for us and bless us in the knowledge you granted us and increase our knowledge. Brothers and sisters, it's my honor and pleasure to welcome you to another episode in our series, Iconic Giants of the Islamic Civilization Century. Before discussing that, I would like to urge myself and every one of you to continue to for our brothers and sisters time, the children and the women and the innocent civilians who have been subjected to relentless bombing. Many of them have been martyred, and many of them are injured. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala come to their help. May Allah help them gain freedom and dignity. May Allah defeat the oppressors. Allahumma ansur al-mustal'afina fi kulli makan. Allahumma kullahum awnum wa nasira. Allahumma alayka bil-zalimin al-mujrimin al-mu'tadin. Allahumma arina fihim majaib qudratik. Allahumma ij'al tadmirahum fi tadbirihim. Brothers and sisters, now back to our topic today, inshallah. Today, I have a very important personality. Of course, every one of the personality that we have so far discussed are iconic. They are giants of the Islamic civilization. We can benefit from each and every one of them. And last week, we were talking about a pioneering woman from Egypt. And today, I am discussing about a great intellectual scholar, a mujaddid, and revivalist from North Africa. He is none other than Ibn Ashur. He was a famous Quranic interpreter interpreter of the Quran. He was recognized as Shaykhul Islam and Sheikh Jami Zaytuna, the Sheikh, the Grand Sheikh of the Zaytuna University, and he is also an encyclopedic scholar who have benefited Muslim community through his immense works, very precious works, and long last enduring contributions. The topics that I will be covering briefly: his milieu and origins, education and career, and his role, his contribution as the Mufassir of the Quran, of course, with among other contributions, and his role as an educationist, and his legacy and wisdom, inshallah. Muhammad Tahir bin Muhammad Ashur. This is the full name. Muhammad Tahir bin Muhammad Ashur was an outstanding Islamic scholar, revivalist. It's better to use the term mujaddid. He was indeed a mujaddid of the Islamic sciences, and also a mujaddid insofar as he gave very, very innovative, creative rulings to meet the challenges of the time. And he was an enduring, he left a legacy of a very, very precious translation of the Quran, a modern contemporary translation of the Quran. And he was also an educationist. Ibn Ashur possessed an encyclopedic mind, an unrivaled mastery of the sciences of the Quran, the sciences of Hadith, the Sharia, fiqh, theology, and Arabic literature. He was also a man well versed. He knew the contemporary times. He knew French, and he could read the Western sources. So he was the author of several highly acclaimed works in tafsir, usul al-fiqh, theories of law, jurisprudence, hadith sciences, educational reform, and Arabic literature. And he has earned awards and recognitions in all of these areas. His long life, because he lived, over 90 years, his long life was devoted to pursuing Islamic knowledge, and he did not limit Islamic knowledge to traditional, but knowledge, all beneficial knowledge. A scholar should be trying to pursue knowledge as much as possible, and that should be a lifelong passion. You know, he fully implemented the slogan of Imam Muhammad ibn Hanbal, al-ilmu min al-mahdi ila al-lahd, that we ought to pursue knowledge from the day we sit in the lap of our mothers until we hit the graves. So this is the kind of philosophy of life he had. And while pursuing knowledge, he is also very creative, very independent. He struggled to break free of the shackles of taqlid, blind imitation, and rigidity. And according to him, this attitude prevented the Muslim mind from live interaction with the Quran. Because Quran for him, the foundation of our knowledge. As Ibn Khaldun put it, that Quran should be the foundation of knowledge, but once we have studied it in depth, we can go to study any sciences, then we know how to integrate them all into the holistic scheme, a complete theory of knowledge that gives justice. Otherwise, without that foundational understanding of the Quran, if you were to go to study any science, each science becomes detached from the other. It has become reductionism. This is called reductionism. There is nothing that would integrate all the sciences together. So, according to Ibn Khaldun, according to Ibn Ashur, the foundation of knowledge should be the Quran. Once we try to have an in-depth understanding of the Quran, we can go and study all these sciences, then we can know how to integrate them. How this lively interaction with the Quran will equip us to deal with the challenges we face in life. His ideas and views kindled a new spirit of awakening, a nahla. A nahla is, or tajdeed, awakening, a new spirit in the study of the Sharia and study of tafsir, hadith sciences, education, moral training, and reform. You know, this is He was born into a tumultuous social, political, cultural, and intellectual milieu. Of course, this was the time colonial period. European colonialists had invaded the Muslim countries from east to west, south to north, and Tunisia was occupied by French colonialists. It resulted in the French colonial pact, ensuring the continuation of their rule in Africa. So Muslims reacted against this foreign occupation. So there were nationwide protests and agitations aimed at the foreign occupation because Muslims wanted to free themselves from occupation. They struggled to free themselves from occupation, still continuing in Palestine. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help our Palestinian brothers to free themselves from foreign occupation. Colonial powers worked also to undermine the Islamic faith and culture. We have mentioned this before also. So this was the context, you know, because faced with these challenges, there is always good in the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So inna Allah la yab'athu لهذه الأمة على رأس مئة كل سنة من يجدد لها أمر دينها. At the every century, turn of every century, Allah will raise up in this ummah those who will strive to revive this religion for them. So reform movements emerged all over the Muslim world. They were aiming at to restore, to regain their freedom and dignity. We mentioned Afghani and Abdu. They were the pioneers in Egypt, calling for reform and revival. In Tunisia, Khairuddin Pasha was one of the most prominent pioneers of Islamic reform. And in Algeria, Abdul Hamid bin Badis, they call him bin Badis. He was an educator, a mufassir once again of the Quran, and Islamic reformer. In Morocco, Muhammad Allah al-Fasi was a politician, writer, poet, and Islamic scholar. So they had to fight this, scholars who wanted to reform, to achieve reform and revival. They were up against forces who want to thwart, who want to obstruct, who want to destroy Islam. And there were enemies within and without. We see it all the time. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his greatest enemies were within Medina itself, the Munafiqeen. They joined forces with the enemies of Islam from outside and inside. The same happens now also. There are enemies within who collaborate with the enemies from outside. So they had to fight a two-pronged war which required enlisting various talents. You have those who fight, take up arms, and those who are equip them morally, intellectually, because today they say media is the most powerful. weapon of war. As Malcolm X said, we cannot underestimate the power of the media, because if we are not careful, the media will make us hate the victim and love the oppressors. So we need to be on guard. So therefore, we need to arm ourselves with knowledge of the facts and knowledge of the realities and knowledge of our sources, so that those who are engaged in the struggle are inspired, motivated, empowered. So one group was taking up arms to fight the occupiers, while others were arming them with knowledge, moral support, intellectual and spiritual efforts to empower them, inspire them, and motivate them, and push them on to move forward, to persevere in the struggle. In Tunisia, the supporters of reform included some of the prominent sheikhs of Zaytuna. Zaytuna was one of the top universities in the Muslim world. Of course, in Egypt, we have Al Azhar at the time, and we had Zaytuna, and we have Kairouan in Morocco. These are the prominent institutions that produce great scholars and reformers. It was into this milieu Ibn Ashur was born. So all of this, the colonialism, the enterprise, their work in the Muslim world, their fight against Islam, intellectual warfare, as well as political, cultural assault on Islamic institutions, Islamic traditions, Islamic values. This was the context that Ibn Ashur was born. His full name was Muhammad al-Tahir bin Ashur. He is known as Muhammad ibn Ashur or Ibn Ashur. He was born in Tunis in 1879 and died in 1973 at the ripe age of 94. So he lived a long life, and all of his life was dedicated to scholarship and to serving the cause of Islam, transmitting this knowledge, the prophetic legacy. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there will always be يحمل هذا العلم من كل خلف عدوله. In each and every generation, this knowledge will be transmitted and passed on by people, men and women of integrity. There is always good in the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as Rasulullah said in another tradition. So this is, when we study the life of these iconic figures like Ibn Ashur and others, we will see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how these prophecies of the Prophet has materialized on the ground. His ancestors migrated, they are Andalusian, they were from Andalusia, Spain, but Spain was conquered by the Christians. They call it Reconquista, and which resulted in massacre, massive persecution and massacre and expulsion of Muslims from Spain. So they belonged to the very, very famous, well established family of scholars and dignitaries in Spain, but they had to flee from Spain. First, they moved to Morocco, and from there, the family moved to Tunisia. Long tradition of scholarship and public service. His father, he was a scholar, no, not outstanding scholar, but both of his grandfathers, on both father's side and mother's side, were outstanding scholars, well established in their scholarship and their contribution to the community. He grew up under the care of his father and under the care. He did not live to enjoy the companionship of grandfather from the paternal side, but he was taken care of and nurtured and mentored by an outstanding scholar, his maternal grandfather. He was a prominent minister, an outstanding scholar. He had a vast library, well equipped library. So, on the one hand, he nurtured and mentored his grandson and planted in him this let him imbibe the moral, spiritual, and intellectual values and cultivated a boundless passion for knowledge. And he also gave him as a gift that rich library he had, which was at the disposal of his grandson Ibn Ashur, because he recognized, tafarrus. This is, a great teacher and mentor can look at the observe his student and see the bright future, as Imam Malik saw the bright future of Imam Shafi and said, I see greatness in you. The same way, Shabi looked at Abu Hanifa and told him that I see a great future for you. This is called tafarrus. So his maternal grandfather could perceive. He had that uh, intuitive premonition that his grandson is going to be a luminary, yes, is going to be an outstanding scholar. So he encouraged him to pursue. And then, of course, he also praised him, make sure that he received the soundest training under reputable scholars. So he started out at the age of 6, memorizing the Quran, which he finished very early, and then he continued to receive a thorough training, grounding in all of the traditional sciences, Arabic grammar, literature, all of these reputable sciences from well established scholars at the Zaytuna University. He had a precocious mind. Allah gifted him with a precocious mind, and also he had that boundless passion and this love of hard work. He did not waste his time on frivolous pursuits. There was nothing more beloved to him in this world than pursuing knowledge, as he mentioned a number of times. So he considered it the greatest passion for him. So, thanks to his all of these qualities, he was able to climb the ladder of academic success very early, just step by step. First, he was appointed as a first rank professor at Zaytuna, his alma mater, and then as a professor at the new colleges of Sadiqiyya and Khalduniya. These were the new institutions that were founded with the understanding that there is a need for harmonizing both the traditional and modern sciences. So they enrich this curriculum of these new institutions, and to accommodate these new sciences, social sciences as well as natural sciences. So he became a professor also. He was promoted to the position of the rector of Zaytuna, Sheikh Zaytuna, a Sheikh al Akbar, the greatest Sheikh of Zaytuna. And for the first time in the history of scholarship, he was awarded the twin titles of Sheikhul Islam of Zaytuna and Sheikhul Islam of the Maliki school. So this was indeed something first in the history of Islamic scholarship. Ibn Ashur was a scholar of many facets and achievements, a person of multiple dimensions. His contributions are vast and they serve different purposes, all to harmonize the Islamic sciences and also service equipping the ummah to meet the new challenges. So he's recognized as the first, a pioneer first to provide a complete modern commentary on the Quran in the continent of Africa. Actually, This is the first modern commentary on the Quran anywhere, actually. There is no commentary that can rival or surpass or come across to his commentary in modern times. And he was the first to write a complete commentary on the Quran from the continent of Africa. And he was also the first to combine, as we mentioned, both very, very high positions, Sheikhul Islam of the Zaytuna University and the Sheikhul Islam of the Maliki School of Jurisprudence. He was the first to receive the Tunisian State Award for Scholarly Excellence and first to have to earn the National Medal of Cultural Merit. You know, excellent contributions to the Islamic culture. Two different Wissam. This is a Wissam medal. The first one, an award. He was also the first to revive the tradition of producing creative works on Maqasid Sharia. Maqasid Sharia is the soul, is the rationale, the purposes, the intents of the Sharia. What is Sharia trying to achieve? What effect it will have? What effect Allah wants for us to accomplish through implementing His laws? This is a very, very important field. But this field had stagnated. And also the Muslim education system had become stagnant. So he was the first to introduce significant educational and institutional reforms in the education system of Zaytuna as well as in Sadiqiyya and Khalduniya. The institutions, of course, other institutions will follow suit. So this credit goes to him. Of course, in this he even surpassed the reformism in Egypt, even though it was begun much early by Afghani and Abdu, as Abdu himself had to confess. His teaching career at the New Sadiqiyya or Khalduni as well, modern institutions, made him realize the wide gap between modern and traditional educational methods. First, so he recognized there is a need to revamp the entire curriculum and also rethink the teaching methods because the old method is emphasis is given on rote learning and memorization, not much attention paid to analyze the content and improve on it or critically examine the sources and things like that. So he was convinced of the urgency of reforming the education system to harmonize the old traditional stream and the modern stream so that Muslims can meet the challenges of the new age. His first work was, indeed, as soon as he was exposed to the new uh, methods, new sciences in Sadiqiyya and Khalduniya, his sharp mind made him aware of how our scholars waste so much time memorizing texts, wasting so much time. And he himself said, I wish I had discovered what I discovered now, earlier, then I could have saved so much time. So he wrote a treatise, very, very valuable one, Alaysa subhu biqareeb, towards a new dawn. This is, I'm translating it. The literal meaning is not the dawn near. So what he meant is towards a new dawn. We are able to uh, enter a new stage, a new dawn, when we heed this message of educational reform. So it was intended to address this critical issue. Ibn Ashur was a prolific writer, of course, after he had armed himself with that encyclopedic thorough mastery of the sources and also he became proficient in French, and he was able to read the Western sciences and traditions, history of both East and the West, the Muslim history as well as the world history. So he produced over 40 works. It was not, all of his works were considered as truly, scholars judged them to be truly original, because for him there is no point in writing something which is repeating what is said before. You should only write if you have, if you are have something original new to contribute. Otherwise forget about. Just it's enough to read what is written before. There is no need to waste your time or the time of readers if you are simply quoting and repeating what was written down earlier, what was left by your predecessor. So for him, all of each and every work, whether it is tafsir, hadith sciences, because hadith sciences he contributed precious works on Muwatta of Malik, which is one of the greatest source book of Maliki jurisprudence, of course, of all jurisprudence. And he thus is a very, very enlightening insights he produced on on that, on Muwatta of Malik, and also he produced, he explained, he worked on, analyzing and providing insights on the sound reading of the two source books, Bukhari and Muslim. So of course, and also he produced tremendous, valuable works in jurisprudence and usul al-fiqh, rich legacy he left behind, important works in various fields such as the Quranic sciences, tafsir, ulum al-Quran, sciences of hadith, hadith studies, Islamic jurisprudence, legal theory, educational reform, renewal of Islamic thought, and literature. However, his masterpiece was his voluminous tafsir of Quran, which he called At-Tahrir wa Tanweer. At-Tahrir is very fine because he want to approach tafsir as passed on through those sources. Ibn Jarir, Ibn Kathir, Baylawi, Fakhruddin Razi, Ibn Atiyah, and so many others. There are so many tafasir, but he realized many of them are simply quoting the others. There is not much originality, creativeness. So he want to verify, he want to sift through this vast material. So verification, he want to critically examine them and verify, attest that which is precious and valuable, while criticizing that which is uh, not very beneficial or even absurd or should be thrown out. A tanweer, because we need to enlighten the Muslim mind. And the source of Islamic enlightenment is the Quran, the enduring miracle of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet's miracle. He states his purpose in writing his tafsir. There is no point in writing a tafsir if you are intending to just quote all the various quotations. So and so said this, so and so said this, so and simply repeating what was written in the sources. If you are doing so, you are under my limiting the inexhaustible wisdom of the Quran. Because Quran la tanqadi ajaibuhu. The wisdom of the Quran, inexhaustible Quran, is an ocean. No one mufassir can exhaust its meaning. So you have, if you are ready, if you keep your mind with the right, arm yourself with the source knowledge, the foundational sciences, and you have the ability to read and understand, you can bring out the precious gems, diamonds. Therefore, I intend to produce new ideas, critically study the previous interpretations, and I want to build on their achievements. While critically examine their interpretations, I'll be forced to accept some of their views and endorsing them while I will be rejecting others. I see the scholars fall into two groups. You can divide the scholars who try to explain the Quran falling into two groups. One group are holding on blindly to the previous interpretations. And some of them say, I cannot. I did not disobey my Shaykh while he was alive. I don't want to disobey him after he is dead. He quotes that scholar who said that. So, meaning he doesn't have anything new to contribute. He's simply repeating what was taught to him. This is called bookish. I was told when I was uh, in my alim course in India, they used to praise a scholar. He knows the book. So the book knowledge, the knowledge of scholar was the expertise of scholar was judged by how he could, analyze the grammar, study the grammar, and resolve the riddles, difficult passages, translate it for you. So they were not trying to emphasize on analyzing the text itself, but rather the understanding, translating it and linguistic grammar. It was a game, uh, you know, grapple with rhetoric and grammar and syntax, and not going beyond the letter. So a mufti was someone who repeat. He looks into the book and mentions that as a fatwa. As Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said, that is not fatwa. Fatwa is you go beyond to understand the text and understand the rationale and then look at the situation and give a new interpretation to resolve that issue that the man or woman is facing in the present time. So, another group of scholars, on the other hand, were trying to undermine everything that was left by the previous scholars. They go to the other extreme. One go to this extreme, another to other extreme, and he said both approaches are destructive. So our duty should be our mission that you scholars, the duty of a scholar should be to build on the legacy of the predecessors while scrutinizing what they have written, verifying, reforming, and reviving and correcting. Otherwise, we would be ungrateful and unfaithful to our own tradition. He also said that tafsir, the purpose of tafsir should be to expound the higher objectives because Quran is a message, life-giving message. لِيُنذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا, to warn those who are alive, to give life. It is a light, it is a life-giving source of guidance. It came to improve the human condition, to cater to the ultimate well-being of humanity in this life and the next life. So higher objective, one should aim at expounding and exposing the higher objectives, maqasid, and purpose of the Quran. And of course, what is the categorical fundamental objective of the Quran is to reform the individual through moral and spiritual purification, tarbiyah and tazkiyah, and reform social conditions and also advance the civilization to make sure there is sound order, there is justice and truth prevails in, in human beings while they are conducting the affairs of the world and the society. So to move the civilization forward and to guide them in the right direction. The scholars consider his work of tafsir a veritable encyclopedia of Islamic scholarship because he approaches the Quran from all these various angles as imitable piece of literature, because he had a thorough mastery of Arabic literature, the poetry and the Arab tradition, Arab customs, and he had also an in-depth knowledge of history and Islamic sciences and modern sciences. So it's an encyclopedia which approaches every ayah from all of these various angles, and he providing, harmonizing, providing a creative interpretation. It's a tafsir spanning multi-volume, works 30 volumes actually. He marshals his expertise in Arabic literature, Islamic scholarship, history, and knowledge of both modern and traditional sciences, sets out to expose the miraculous nature of the Quran. Quran is the enduring miracle given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this miracle will be there until the end of times, unless the miracles given to each and every prophet before him. The miracle of Musa alayhi salam, we don't see it, physical miracle. The miracle of Ibrahim alayhi salam, also physical. We didn't live to see it, but we believe it. The miracle of Isa alayhi salam, his healing powers. Yes, he healed the sick and restored eyesight to the blind, and he revived the dead. But we don't see it now. But not so the miracle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's a scientific, intellectual miracle, a miracle addressing the human mind and heart and spirit. So this miracle will live until the end of times. So he said, I wish to show you only a glimpse of the miraculous nature of the Quran and expose certain aspects of his inimitability. The entire mission of Rasulullah was built on the staggering mu'jiza of the Quran. Of course, Prophet has been given other miracles, but this is the Quran, this is the miracle he used to challenge humankind. That he is chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because he is an ummi. How could he produce a work like that of Quran? It's a conclusive proof that is inseparable from that miracle until the day of resurrection. So the mission of, how do we prove the mission of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It is the Quran, and it will speak for the divine authority of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he has he has written a very, very lengthy introduction, Al Muqaddimat. This is a introductory fund about 10, points actually. So he expounds at length on the following: the inimitable eloquence and topology of the Quran, the linguistic types of the inimitable invention, stylistic first, mubtakarat of the Quran. As he had a very, very thorough mastery of the Arabic literature, and he saw how the Quranic style and rhetoric is unequaled. There is nothing like that. He examples after examples he brings out from the Quran to show that nothing, this kind of phrase or wording is not found in any of the previous literature. Stylistic customs of the Quran, showing again the inimitable nature of the Quran and the in-depth wisdom of the Quran, and knowledge of the unseen as enshrined in the Quran, including its treatments of the nature and the natural phenomena. Of course, this is only, I am giving you just a glimpse of his approach actually. It took him almost 40 years to complete the work. Thanks to his lifelong interaction and reflections on the Quran, he discerned the rationale and the higher purposes of the Sharia. Because, this is one thing some scholars have pointed out. The great scholar Muhammad al-Ghazali said, you know, even our laws of marriage and divorce have been veered away from the foundational principles enshrined in the Quran on this concept of divorce. For example, because a person sits down and says talak, 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 he may be half asleep. So they will say divorced. This is, but when you carefully study the verses of the Quran on talaq, we will recognize there is a need to revise this kind of rulings. So he discerned the rational and higher purposes of the Sharia, his lifelong exposure, interaction with the Quran exposed him to that. So he was compelled to write another masterpiece, which is called Maqasidu Sharia, the intents and purposes and objectives of the Sharia. It is considered also a very a pioneering contribution to the field. He wrote the work as a reference for the jurists to equip the jurists, the fuqaha, the muftis, so that they can use it as a reference to see, because when you study the fiqh, many times you fail to see, you get caught up by looking at the tree and lose that global view. You forget the forest. So you don't have the global view. But this reference that he has written will give us so that we don't get focused on the tiny, minute details, different views, to forget that rational coherence of the Sharia. So to see through this forest, the wood, so that you don't ignore you don't lose that global view, and you fail to take into account while giving ruling the demands of the new circumstances, because every circumstance need may require a new insight into the sources. You need to consider the other objectives of the Sharia while you are ruling, giving a ruling. Otherwise, your fatwa will serve no purpose. And also, when you study the maqasid of the Sharia, you don't become caught up with this minutia, so you will be able to shun dogmatic attachment and blind imitation and rigidity. And this will help us to open the gates of ijtihad. Because Ibn Ashur called that there is a need for Muslims to open the gate of ijtihad. Of course, before we do so, we have to arm ourselves with the mastery of the sciences and understanding the world and the demands of the time. He said that usulul fiqh in the present form was riddled with technicalities and linguistic tropes, and thus failed to provide the decisive criteria or principles for arriving at new rulings. So he broke fresh ground in a study of maqasid, and he paved the way for revival of spirit of ijtihad. As I mentioned, alluded before, all of his works on tafsir, hadith, fiqh were written in a new spirit, and they provided original contributions. He held that only a mastery of the maqasid of Sharia can help us to provide solutions for the challenges Muslims are facing in the modern world. Ibn Ashur as a reformer, he was a great reformer, and this reform spirit is manifested in his bold fatwas and his reformative initiatives to reform the Muslim society. First of all, one of the things Muslims are facing even today, even though years have passed, gone by, still, when it comes to our understanding of the role of women in society, the status of women in society, we are backward. He offered several rulings to advance the cause of Muslim women. This is a very interesting story about him. And it is said about him that he is credited with delivering the first first man to deliver shortest Friday khutbah in the entire history of Islam. You may ask how it happened. Once he climbed the minbar on a Friday and addressed the congregation, women have come to me in the shopping mall complaining of their husbands because the husbands are abusing them, mistreating them, whatever. So he repeated, he wanted to make them aware that they cannot continue to do that. He repeated the statement twice, but he elicited no response from the audience, either negative or positive or agreeing. So he sat down and he stood up and said, there is no good in your prayer when your women are naked. So lead the prayer, O Imam. So, meaning he made them understand this kind of prayers, prayer as a ritual, there is no benefit. There is benefit in prayer only when you understand the spirit of prayer. And the spirit of prayer is we are accountable before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maliki yawmiddin, master of the day of reckoning. So if your women are complaining that you are abusing them, what good is in your prayer? If people are accusing you that you have oppressed them, you have treated them unjustly, how can you continue to pray and prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us onto the straight path, and you know you are accountable, you will be judged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said there is no good in this kind of ritual prayers, ritual fasting. One of the very, very contentious issues that scholars debate, continue to debate endlessly is, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while talking about the financial transactions, wasiyah, you know, two men, and if it is woman, one woman, two women in place of one man, so there has to be four women. It's only so. Why is this inequality when it comes to testimony, shahada? So he showed through his detailed analysis that it was contextual and you cannot extend it. And of course, it should be applied only in that particular context of the revelation, the time of the revelation, the customs of the revelation, related to the context of women being absent altogether from the area of financial transactions. But today, you cannot extend it to modern society or culture where women are active participants in society. They are everywhere. They may be running corporations, businesses. So how can you say two women equal to one man? No. So should not be applied generally. And also another thing, the issue of polygamy. He said it is contextual. There is a reason for that. Why Quran allows it, and it should not be applied generally. And he saw the destructive effects of polygamy on the family. So he supported the Tunisian government had wanted to reform the family laws, and one of their objectives was to ban polygamy, except in exceptional circumstances, and also to give women the right to divorce and also choose their marriage partners, because they should not be forced to marry. The parents have no right to, and also freedom to participate in public life. All of these progressive reform ideas he supported. He agreed that government should step in to restrict the right of a person having more than one wife. That is fine, because When you understand, look at the issue from the maqasid point of view, yes, it is possible to make this kind of reform. And also, there is this verse in the Quran, Ar-Rijalu Qawwamun ala Nisa. Some people interpret it that men are commander in chiefs of women or over women. He said, no, that is not. He goes into great length to analyze the usage of this word, the root meaning, and the usage in the Arabic literature and the Arabic language, and try to show that the real meaning is man has the duty to maintain and support the family. It does not mean man have an arbitrary right to control women, taking away her right, her freedom. No. But however, even though he was progressive in these views, he was careful not to give in to the secularizing attempts of the rulers, who were simply puppets in the hands of the Western powers. Instead, he was bold to speak the truth to the power. When Habib Bourguiba, the Tunisian president, asked him to give a fatwa for the workers to skip the fasting of Ramadan, claiming it adversely affected the productivity. Of course, he agreed that people who are in extreme dire circumstances, they can skip the fasting. But you cannot say workers, people who are working in the whatever, they should be breaking their fast, skipping fast, because it diminishes the productivity. So what he did, he said, yes, I will address the people on this. He went on the radio and recited the verse of the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. You who believe, fasting is enjoined, prescribed for you, as it was enjoined for those before you, so that you may be mindful of Allah. Then he continued, Allah speaks the truth, and Burqiba has spoken the falsehood. He rejected, he refused to give in, to compromise on this fundamental principle of Islam. Thanks to his bold statement, the people refused to obey the president and observe the fast, obeying their great scholar. He offered several rulings on issues contentious among scholars at the time. There was this great, Muslims had gone out to Europe, and the issue came whether they have to just continue wearing thou, which is, good in the desert hot condition, whether they are allowed to wear European attire such as pants, suits, ties, or not. This fatwa was asked to Muhammad Abdu, and Abdu answered positively, yes. And in Tunisia, this same issue was addressed by Ibn Ashur, but he went to great detail and studied the sources and showed that the Prophet ﷺ wore what was available at the time in that particular milieu that he came from, and he never imposed Arab attire on anyone coming to Islam. So one may wear any modest attire as long as it is not associated with a particular religion. Of course, you cannot wear if there is a particular form of attire that Hindus use, or Buddhists use, or Christians use, or Jews use. Muslims should shun it, of course, because we cannot follow the specific religious rituals of others. As opposed to the prevailing view, this is something very, very important. This is a difficulty. Many people, you are coming from far away, traveling from New York to Jeddah, and miqat, they say, is comes before you enter Jeddah. So you have to change into miqat, ihram, and you have to make that niyyah and offer in the plane. It's almost impossible, difficult. Even though it may be easy in a Saudi plane where they have a supper, but still it is difficult. You cannot take a bath there, nothing. Even performing wudu properly, very difficult. Making a istinja, very difficult. So, as opposed to that prevailing, he ruled that Jeddah is the miqat for those who travel by air or sea. So, if you're coming to Jeddah, if you are going to Medina, it's a different issue altogether, because if you are coming to arrived in Medina and you are traveling by land, by train, or by car, then of course your miqat is on the way. The land is different. Jeddah, you are coming to Jeddah by plane or ship, the miqat is Jeddah. It was based again on his consideration of the purpose of the maqasid of the Sharia. Miqat, the way to understand the miqat is you are traveling, taking a long drive to Ottawa or Montreal. On the way, you have resting stations where you recuperate, take a coffee, and of course, even more than that, when you are traveling in the desert on a camel, you need to take a rest. You need to recuperate. And in the case of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he slept. He spent overnight in the Rulefa, took a bath, he refreshed himself, and that is the miqat, purpose of the miqat. And nothing of the maqasid can be applied to those who do not travel on land. If you travel by air or ship, this cannot be applied. Also, before his death, you see, a scholar knows what he is. He is accountable before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why I really, really appreciate this great scholar. This is something now we have realized in North America, but still many people are not convinced. Here is a profound scholar, a bahar, he is an ocean, actually. He ruled that instead of physical sighting to determine the beginning and end of Islamic months, we should base on scientific calculations. Alhamdulillah, it's really fresh insight where he and that is also his fatwa, even though he had given earlier fatwa of that we should go by sighting, but before that he gave this new fatwa because his understanding, his mind is widened, his knowledge is widened. So he also advocated openness and tolerance among scholars. While dealing with critical issues, he never attacked people who disagree with him, never vilified them or belittled. He was always respectful and dignified in his approach. He shunned away from the tendency. Scholars today, we will see many of them, as soon as you disagree, they say he is a mubtadi or he is even a kafir. Declare, verdict of kufr, very easy, or condemn somebody as a heretic. He stated, you cannot do that. On issues that are well agreed, consensually agreed as the essentials of the Islamic creed, apart from those issues that are consensually, that are widely accepted as categorical tenets of the Islamic faith, Muslims are free to choose what they choose to believe, even though they may vary in the degrees of correct. That doesn't mean that everyone is correct, 100% correct. There may be difference in the degrees of correctness and soundness. So a Muslim can be a Sunni Salafi. Instead of saying only Salafis are Muslims, cannot say Asharis are not Muslims, Maturidis are not Muslims, Mu'tazilis are not Muslim, Kharijis are not. No, you may be a Sunni Salafi, Ashari, Maturidi, Mu'tazili, Khariji, Zaidi, or Imami. And they can argue among themselves about the degrees of soundness of the Quran. Yet we do not call any, we have no right to call any of them as an infidel. Cannot call a Salafi as an infidel, Ashari as an infidel, Maturidi, even though you may belong to any of these groups. Educationist. Ibn Ashur, like Muhammad Abdu, believed the reform of Muslim thought could not happen without educational reform. He advocated an overhaul of the content and method. The method of rote learning must be replaced by critical analytical method. And he said modern sciences must be studied along with traditional Islamic sciences. So he was considered, Abdu called him as ambassador of the call for reform. And he credited scholars from Zaytuna that they are far ahead of us in Egypt. Testimonials, there are so many scholars who are, I just bring a few of these. Of course, is most important. Another Sheikh of Al Azhar. He was his friend in Zaytuna, his colleague, and was also, they were both professors in Zaytuna. But Sheikh Khidr, the Sheikh of Azhar, said it's very, there were a lot of exchanges between them, very respectful. And my astonishment at his radiant character and magnanimous conduct is no less than my astonishment at his genius as a scholar. Another scholar described him, a sheikh who filled me with awe, reminiscent of the pious elders, Salafus Salih. Even at an advanced age, he possessed an extremely sharp and open mind, deep knowledge of the sciences of the ancients and the moderns, and ready to tackle complex issues. The nobility of his character and pleasing manners attracted people towards him. Sheikh Muhammad Bashir Ibrahimi referred to him as the luminary of the present times and a veritable treasure. Thanks to his encyclopedic knowledge of the Islamic sciences, independent judgment, sharp mind, and thorough mastery of the science sources, he taught and benefited generations. He has left an enduring legacy. Scholars also praise his patience, his composure, his perseverance in the face of overwhelming challenges. They said that he kept his tongue and pen free of malice, enmity towards his foes and critics, and never used harsh words or style. Instead, he was always gentle and noble in style and expression. Sheikh Muhammad Barkhoja described him as a sheikh who was peerless in his time, ever attentive to his studies, research, writing, and yet never tired of benefiting others with knowledge and wisdom. Let us see some of the pieces of wisdom. Of course, his works are full of this wisdom, kind of wisdom. Justice is the basis of civilization. It is the foundation of the earth and the mainstay of the state. The most important offshoot branches of justice are two: freedom and brotherhood. If both are materialized, the state flourishes and endures. If freedom is not accompanied by justice, the state will descend into the abysmal pit. The reality of justice is that each person enjoys their rights and respects the rights of others and expresses their opinions freely. But all of this cannot justice exist without justice. As for brotherhood, it is also essential for the flourishing of the state. It cannot exist when the nation is constantly engaged in internal rivalry and fights. People are always hostile to others. When they do so, it results in chaos, leading to the weakness and destruction of the society. Yes, we are to respect the views of others, but respecting the views of others does not mean that we shy away from critiquing them. We need to be critical, independent. Instead, we ought to be judicious so that we don't rush to attack the same while it still can be possibly right. So we should assume that one person, the person who we are disagreeing, may be right. So don't rush to condemn. Revival of religion must begin with reforming the people in this world. either by correcting their religious thoughts through sound understanding of the verities of faith or through right religious conduct that results in righteous actions. When Muslims look at the past, we are astonished, flabbergasted when we consider the achievements of our predecessors, because they made vast strides in cultivation of sciences. But then the decay set in after the 9th century of Hijrah. When you look for the reason for this, the wide gap that our predecessors were full of confidence and were free to exercise their creativity, while we are satisfied to be stagnant and rigid and continue to imitate them blindly without ever caring to think for ourselves. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on this great giant of a scholar, Ibn Ashur. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspire me and every student of Islamic knowledge, every scholar of Islam, to study his sources, his works very, very deeply, because surely by doing so, we can benefit ourselves and benefit the future generations of Muslims. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We will see you next week, inshallah. We will be studying Dr. Ismail Faruqi, one of the greatest intellectuals from North America, inshallah. So join me as we study Dr. Faruqi.